Welcome to Aquatics by Nature. I noticed a few of you have been asking in the questions and that you'd like to see a little bit more about how I sort of prune and maintain this 28-year-old low-tech, no water change, unfertilised aquarium. So I thought I needed to do a little bit of a trim anyway in preparation for my next video. So I thought today would be a sort of ideal opportunity to just show you a little bit of the sort of routine maintenance that I do on this tank, sort of normally every week or two, something like that, just to keep things tidy and keep things sort of reasonably in check. So I'll just sort of randomly sort of go through a bit of tidying up for you. Firstly, I don't know if you can see here, but you can see on the crinum here, this leaf here is starting to decay. The ends of it are starting to actually go yellow and actually rot away. So that leaf is obviously sort of expiring, and it's starting to look a little bit tatty now. So it's time for that leaf to go. So simple as anything really, I just nip it off at the base. It's very simple and easy, but it just gets rid of a little bit of decay in the tank, and always try and make sure that I make sure the snails and things are knocked off and drop back into the tank itself. And also I see some of the water lettuce here is, you can see the roots are getting a little bit black on it and are actually not looking so healthy. So it's definitely time to thin a little bit of that out, and partly just to release a little bit of the surface so that there's slightly better gas exchange and let a little bit more light in, but also just to get rid of a few of the older sort of tattier plants, as it were. It's just one of those sort of ongoing little processes really, just keep removing a little bit just to sort of keep things ticking along and keep things tidy. And same from the other end, just remove a few of the bits that are just looking a little bit rough. They're just kind of expiring a little bit now, some of them, as they get a little bit old. I notice also in the tank there's actually a few sort of odd water lettuce roots like that, which have obviously just dropped off, which again is just a sign that they're sort of old plants that are getting a little bit hungry. So any bits like that I spot, it's another bit there, I tend to just pull those out. Just helps keep the tank a little bit tidier along the way. And then in a similar vein, the tiger lotus here, this lily here, it looks as though it's gradually starting to go into its sort of dormant winter phase now. So the leaves are starting to finish, and you can see some of the leaves, like this one here in particular, and also this one here, they're actually starting to go brown and decay, and pieces are falling off. So they've come to the end of their sort of natural life. So again, we just nip those off at the base, get rid of those. And there's basically three reasons that I tend to remove leaves like this from a tank. The first is obvious, that it is just an aesthetic thing. You know, a leaf like that doesn't exactly look very nice, so it's just a matter of tidying up the tank and making things look more respectable. But also, decaying plant material releases all kinds of sort of chemicals and things into the water, which tend to potentially cause you lots more algal problems. So it's always quite a good sort of idea to actually remove the worst of the decaying vegetation in a tank, and you will certainly get less algae. And that's particularly true, incidentally, if you've got a very new tank. Decay in a new tank is something that you really want to sort of minimise. Too much decay really doesn't do you any favours when you're trying to actually sort of settle the tank down. But the third reason, and probably the most important really with this tank, is by actually removing bits of plant material before it actually decays, you're actually removing all the nutrients that particular leaf has actually absorbed when it was actually growing. So this actually removes the nutrients from the system, which means that you can run the tank like mine with far less, or in the case of this tank, no water changes at all. Without removing that plant material, sooner or later you'll find that your water quality would actually deteriorate. Now really they're the only two things that are, or two or three things that are actually sort of starting to decay, although actually I can see another leaf down here that's on the tiger lotus that's pretty rough, so I think we'll get rid of that while we're there. Just try and make the tank look a little bit nicer, ready for the next video, as it were. But as you can see, the moss has been doing, well, exceptionally well, which has been a surprise, but rather a nice surprise, I have to say. So I think I'm just going to remove a little bit. I don't actually want to remove too much because I rather like it, but there's a few places like here where I think it'd be nice to see a little bit more of the tiger lotus leaf. So I'll just gently tease out a few bits of it. I find this is spiky moss. I find that I don't really need to trim this moss. It seems to just make little clumps like that I can actually just sort of pull out and remove when they get a little bit big. Like there's a little bit there that if I can just thin it out a little bit without demolishing it, I think that's quite a nice way of doing it actually. Just a little bit of thinning, but not anything sort of too drastic as it were. But those who've been following my videos, and I've been trying to get it to grow on the back grass here, will see that actually the sort of backing of the tank here, you can see that it still doesn't want to stick. It's pinned there with a drawing pin, but it's clearly not going to work, so I'm going to have to try a different plant to actually do that. But I think there's a few more bits here that just look a little bit out of scale, and in fact I think that little mound, as pretty as it is, I think is in the wrong place, so I think we'll get rid of that. But actually I don't think I'm going to remove that much more of the moss. I kind of like it really. It is slightly swamping out the cryptocorynes, but it's just so nice and so incredibly lush, and it makes the whole tank sort of glow, so I'm a bit loath to remove too much of it, even if it is sort of swallowing up the crypts a bit. But there's plenty of crypts at the other end, so I'm not overly bothered. Some of you will also remember that I removed the ambulia and the guppy grass to make this tank a bit simpler. Well, I obviously didn't do a particularly good job, because the ambulia, as you can see here, is deciding to come back from nowhere, as it were, quite successfully, but a little bit like that I quite like, so at the moment I'm just going to leave it. But there are also a few bits of guppy grass. There's a little spindly bit here which isn't exactly doing the tank much justice, so I think we'll just get rid of that. And there's also a little bit at the other end coming up in the crypt carpet that don't particularly want there, so I think we'll just pull that little bit out. Oops, we seem to have got a crypt at the same time, but not to worry. That kind of thing happens. And as I say, that's just a very simple little tidy up that I sort of do every couple of weeks. There's just one other little job really that I want to do while I'm there. I don't know if you can see very easily, but on this piece of wood here, there's actually some ordinary Java moss growing, and it's a little bit spindly being ordinary Java moss. It's sort of a bit wiry, but I think what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to cut it back quite hard, and that should make it actually spread along the wood a bit better. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a haircut. Seems a bit brutal when there's only a little bit on there, but it will just help it to spread out and hopefully actually cover the piece of wood rather than just stick out like that. But just give it a little going over. And actually I've just spotted something else I want to do actually while I'm there. The Amazon sword here, which again is doing quite nicely. It's still quite small, but it's putting up lots of nice leaves. You can see it's got one or two leaves like this one here, which are starting to go a little bit threadbare and will start to look untidy and sort of tatty soon. So a sort of slightly preemptive strike, I'm just going to nip those off. There's one there, and I can see another one at the back here. You can see it's kind of going brown and not looking very nice, so we'll preempt that one and get rid of that one. As I say, it gets rid of a few more nutrients out of the tank and just helps the tank look a little bit tidier. And I can see the hydrocotyle along the back here always gets a little bit tatty because it doesn't really grow in the water because the fish chew it, but you get a few sort of spindly dangly bits, and I do just nip those off periodically just to keep it a little bit tidier. But I don't really have to do much to it because the fish actually just trim it. It mostly just actually grows above the water surface. It can't get too much below, but it's slightly stirred the tank up, but not too bad at the moment. It's quite good. Oh, actually there's another little bit of guppy grass that I don't particularly want. Let's just remove that. There we go. Hopefully we haven't spooked the fish too much in doing that. Do it reasonably gently. But that's basically all the actual trimming and maintenance that, as I say, I would do over a week or maybe a couple of weeks, just depending on how fast things are actually growing. But this tank is actually quite cool. It's only running in the very low 70s, so it actually grows quite slowly this time of the year, but that will speed up as the room naturally warms up as the season goes along. So anyway, that's to say just a little bit of trimming for you. So if you'd like to know more about my naturally balanced, no water changed, unfertilised aquariums, I'd be eternally grateful if you'd subscribe and give me a like. And you could also look at my playlists if you want to see more about this particular tank. But most importantly, enjoy your aquarium. Don't be a slave to it. Thanks for watching.